Hi guys, welcome to About Ukraine. Here I am in Warsaw, and it's pretty nice over here, a nice sunny day, but at the same time I have to keep reminding myself that tens of thousands of Ukrainians have been killed, and more are continue being killed and tortured as we speak, as we sit here, and it's something that I have to keep telling myself to really understand the situation that's happening in Ukraine. So this nightmare, like, how long is it gonna last? How long are Russians gonna keep killing Ukrainians? And this is something that I have to keep asking myself. This question is always on top of my mind. And to answer that, I guess I have to look back at 2012 when I first came to Ukraine. When I came to Ukraine in 2012, I kind of noticed that Ukraine was not very Ukrainian. It was kind of a Russian place, to be honest. Back then, Yanukovych used to be the president, and there was an active suppression of the Ukrainian language. I found most people in the parliament didn't even speak Ukrainian. What I remember seeing is in around October, this parade, this reenactment of World War II that was going on Khreshchatyk in central Kiev. And to me, that was a little bit weird, because they were all wearing these red stars and everything and Soviet symbols, and I'm thinking, how does that really connect it to Ukraine? But anyway, that was back then. And it goes to the point that Russia never really considered Ukraine as a country. It was always like sphere of influence. It was a part of its backyard that it could interact with as it wanted. What's interesting is that Russia never really had this sort of attitude to other countries that are its neighbors, like Latvia, Estonia, Finland, that kind of thing. It was always Ukraine that was a target of this. Also, Russia never really owned up to the fact that it terrorized Ukraine for centuries through collectivization, mass deportations, arbitrary executions, and a terrible famine called the Holodomor, which was a man-made famine to exterminate Ukrainians. Take the imposing of Soviet celebrations, take the imposing of the Russian language and the refusal of Ukrainians to speak their own language. Take all that together, and it just goes to show you that Russia was actively trying to undermine Ukraine ever since 2012, ever since I could observe it through my own eyes. I mean, the 2014 revolution in Ukraine changed that, and it actually made me hopeful for Ukraine, because Ukraine was starting on a new trajectory that would be way different than what it was before. And that made me hopeful, that made many other foreigners actually hopeful and immigrate to Ukraine at that time. But unfortunately, we know what happened then. Russia annexed Crimea, Russia took over the Donbas area, they refused Ukrainians control over it. There was a simmering conflict over there for 8 years. But despite all that, in Ukraine, we've also had this fifth column of Russian influence peddlers that were, just for money from the Kremlin, they were trying to keep some sort of an influence in Ukraine. They were trying to push some nationalistic, ideas that were not too popular. They're trying to push the agenda that Ukraine should maybe kind of tone down on its rhetoric when it comes to anti-Russian sentiment. It should tone down its language issues. It should tone down on the military a little bit. There's always these things that Russia wanted Ukraine to do through its proxy agents. I think a lot of people were actually FSB agents here in Ukraine. And now what do we have? We have tens of thousands of killed civilians. We have confirmed reports of the mayor of Chernihiv, a city with I don't know how many people. I mean, it's a few 100,000 people there for sure. There's 1,000 people dead in Chernihiv. The atrocities that happened in Irpin, Bucha, Vorzel, Hostomel. I mean, it's all being uncovered right now, and we're not sure how many people died there, maybe thousands as well. What about what happened in Kramatorsk, the deadly rocket that hit and killed 50 people and 5 children? I mean, maybe that's more than 50 people right now. I mean, it's just constantly going up, the tally of the dead and injured. I'm not even talking about Mariupol. Last month, an estimate of 20,000 dead. I mean, that was last month. Now, it's still under occupation, the majority of Mariupol. So who knows how many people are still being shot, tortured, raped. I mean, stuff that we hope that we never, ever even can imagine. I mean, and that is basically the day-to-day life of people in those occupied territories. Recently, I find myself watching a lot of Timothy Snyder, and he's a World War II historian and basically a historian of Eastern Europe during the World War II era and the 30s. And he noted that Putin has started this disgusting distortion of history and this moral atrocity that he's trying to impose on everyone. He's trying to change what World War II stands for, what post-World War II Europe stands for. All these institutions that exist right now to preserve peace, he's trying to undermine them. And he's doing that by distorting history. One thing that is really shocking to me and very hard to understand is how he's using the word Nazis. He's trying to denazify Ukraine, right? I mean, this is official. It's been repeated over and over and over again with greater intensity as time goes on. People are going along with the fact that Russia is distorting the definition. I mean, the term Nazi right now is used to describe anyone right now who doesn't consider themselves a Russian and identifies themselves as Ukrainian. I mean, think about it. It's a huge turning point, I think, in history. We're not used to this word being used this way. I mean, it's something that we all have to grapple with, I think. I mean, the actual Nazis of the 30s and 40s and their crimes and their atrocities, they're being discarded in this conversation. I mean, it's irrelevant right now because Nazis mean something else. And there's this irony of Russia shelling the Babin Yar site, the Jewish memorials, Holocaust survivors that are very old right now. They're at the end of their lives, but many have been killed, right, by Russia in Ukraine. Don't even get me started about the fact that, Zelensky is himself a Jewish president, and he has family members that have been killed in World War II. And Russia still keeps to this line that if you're Ukrainian, you must be a Nazi, right? I mean, that is a mantra that's been coming out, and it justifies death, distortion of facts, rewriting of history, torture, rape, like whatever. Like, because you're a Nazi, because you're Ukrainian, essentially, anything is justified. Anything is justified in this denazification project. Apparently, it justifies genocide that we haven't seen since Srebrenica, Rwanda, the actual Holocaust, justifies torture, rape, like arbitrary execution, barbarism. After the atrocities were revealed in Bucha and right now in Kramatorsk, I keep thinking, like, Russia has already done the deed, and it's already confessed to it with its publications, with its propaganda machine. So what's left? What's left? I don't know. I think it's The Hague, I think it's trials, I think it's tribunals. On that note, I think I'm gonna leave it with you guys, and until next time, take care.